Yes. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files, the show for anyone who manages people, projects, processes for a living. I am Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
And I'm Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk, and welcome to another episode of our series where Sharon and I explore management and leadership topics from the perspective of what not to do.
So today we are talking about a mistake that, it really comes from a good place most of the time, but it can also create a lot of damage over time. And that's the idea of
children, small children. Oh, wait, no, different topic. Okay.
Breathing down everyone's neck. It's kind of relevant for children too. In other words, micromanagement. And really, micromanagement, we'll talk about this in a minute, but it's the urge to stay involved beyond an urge to stay involved in every single decision, task, detail, and usually in the name of like quality or accountability or something good.
I agree with you. The intent is almost always positive, or I like to think that it is. We want, as leaders, as managers, we want things done correctly. We want them on time, no surprises. But the impact of micromanagement is usually the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of improving outcomes, usually excessive oversight. That's where, we're talking about micromanagement. We're not talking about management. We're talking about micromanagement.
Fine line, but yes.
Excessive oversight can slow down delivery, can erode confidence, and ultimately can quietly disengage employees and teams and workers and team members, mostly because people tend to stop thinking for themselves and they just sit and wait for instructions and they're just like, tell me what to do next.
I think it's interesting, where micromanagement actually comes from. Sometimes it's out of fear. So that employees like, look, I don't want to fail. I want to screw up. I don't want to get yelled at again. I want to be blamed for something. Like I put my neck out. I said, hey, I'll take on this task. I'm new at it. I'm not strong in those areas. But there's all this pressure that's coming to, from the management team. Other times it is about control. It is where you hire somebody that has the skill set. They're fully capable, but there's not yet trust there. And so you feel like you have to be involved in everything to add value, to make sure it's done right until you have trust that this person is able to do it.
Yeah, that's fair. But the cost shows up quickly. If you continue to micromanage, teams can lose autonomy because they're just all sitting there waiting to be told what to do. Creativity can go down. If they're not allowed to think for themselves, they're also not allowed to be, innovative or creative or try to solve problems on their own. And ultimately, leaders can become the bottlenecks. Because everything has to flow through them or go to them or be decided by them. And you're absolutely right. A lot of times people are afraid, either the leader or the team member is afraid of what's going to happen if it's on them.
I've seen in environments, I think it's the most common scenario where it's micromanagement has become a cultural aspect, is that people then optimize their efforts based on what they think, what they know will get approved versus this is what I should be doing. So they're not saying, hey, is this the right decision? They're really asking, is my manager going to sign off on this? Yes. Is this going to get through the leadership committee?
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. And that ultimately creates a culture where mistakes are avoided at all costs because they don't want to treat them as opportunities. They don't want to be held accountable. They just want to do what they're told, and they don't want to have to really think for themselves. And that's where growth can really stall.
You know what's ironic about all this, Sharon, is that a lot of leaders then think like, hey, I know what's going on. I'm on top of all the issues because they're micromanaging. Do they really understand what's going on there? Because if they're on top of those things, they're likely unaware of the performance and morale issues that are declining underneath that effort.
Yeah. And so that's why this episode, while the topic is, breathing down everyone's neck, micromanagement gone wrong, the episode is really about finding balance. How can you create the right guardrails, expectations, accountability, quality standards to make sure that things are getting done, right? And this is something that most leaders deal with. How do I know that things are getting done and getting done the way they need to be getting done, but without hovering over every single move that any team member makes?
And how do you shift from control to trust so that people feel safe in making their decisions? They're learning from their mistakes. They're not afraid to make mistakes, and they're actually growing into stronger contributors and future leaders.
Yeah, because you get so much more done when there's trust within your team, your group, your company, your organization, whatever that, tribe of people is. When there's trust there, you're going to get more done.
I feel like we should break out into song at this point. There's something about trust.
Maybe not.
As always, should be an interesting conversation. As with every episode, please feel free to comment throughout. If we don't get it here during this hour, during this half hour, 45, whatever this time ends up being, we'll definitely follow up with you. And we definitely want to hear your feedback and suggestions for future topics.
Yeah. Okay. Now that we're lost in the time-space continuum, let's get started with some definitions.
Longest intro ever, Sharon. I think the point we made here in the intro, micromanagement usually starts with good intentions. We all want quality. Leadership wants quality. They want predictability. They want fewer surprises out of that. But the moment you insert yourself into every single decision, you trade trust for control, and that always costs more than it saves in time.
Yeah. And I think, we kind of chuckle at this a little bit, but there is a fine line between management and micromanagement. Management is required. You must have somebody to identify what needs to happen, keep track of what needs to happen, report on what needs to happen. There is a reality that there is real management that does need to happen. I think when we start talking about micromanagement, it's a lot of times it's managers who, like you said, mean well, but ultimately the definition of the line really is, are you doing a job that is keeping everything organized and still retaining the ability for people on your team to make mistakes, innovate, create, think on their own, make their own, conscious decisions? Or are you running a team where you're telling everybody what to do and they are scared to death to tell you that whatever it is that you're asking them to do is the wrong thing, right? If there's no, like you said, no trust to be able to provide feedback, then you might be in a case of where you're on the micromanagement side, not on just the management side.
I like the idea of like a good manager is when you're hiring people, you try to hire the best people possible for, obviously there's a number of different factors there of what you can afford and the skills required, kind of all those things, but you find the best, most responsible people that can do those things. Is then to build a system in which they can then go and deliver value. And I always like this, this is part of my early training, to let people be people. Don't micromanage how they're doing something, but focus on the system. Did I not give you the right tools? Did we have the wrong expectations, the wrong scope of what was required for this? Do we have the right skills? Do you need help in other areas? Kind of all those other things. But if you approach it from that system, like what else can we do for the system? Which is not to say that you might just have the wrong person in that role doing that. But again, the better answer would be, and this is kind of the clinical approach. I never say that word clinical. Which is, do we have the wrong person in that role? If you don't fully, now that we understand what's actually needed to go and get this done, is this the right person to go and get that done or not? But if you're finding yourself sitting there having to do it because they're incapable of doing it versus you don't trust, those are two different things.
Yeah, it's really kind of funny, actually. I was kind of looking at some of this the other day. I was reading a leadership guide about something, and I took a little note. So it's kind of funny. This is very timely because one of the notes that I jotted down is when somebody says, "I can't do this," right? I can't do this. The question is, do they need clarity? Do they need authority? Or do they need confidence? Right? Those are the three things that are primary and missing. And what often happens is good managers will often replace helping people do things on their team with doing it for them. And that's when you start running into problems of micromanagement, is when you do the work for the team members instead of saying, what of this are you missing? How can I help you? Then you kind of put your foot over that line.
We've talking about, the project and cultural impacts of this attitude. What it does is people stop thinking critically. They wait for instructions. We've talked about in a lot of past episodes, like the ticket takers out there. And there's nothing wrong with that in certain roles. Like we've both worked at companies where we worked in operations and support roles. Right. Or even think of it as, like working in fast food where you're literally taking tickets, new orders coming in, and then the work, think of it that way. There are some scenarios, there are some places where like you do not work on anything that's not attached to a ticket that comes in. That's what you go and do. And I actually, early on in my career, very early on, when I was about 22, 23, like second company, and said, like, all right, when you go and finish this, then come back and let me know. And because she wanted to know, one, she wanted to check the quality of that work. And she didn't yet know me to know, hey, I could assign a bunch of things to Christian. He would go off and be responsible and finish these things. Because she was used to, this is beginning of everyone's career. She was used to people that were like, would finish something and then sit there playing Minesweeper. Like, no. Finish the work, come back, I'll give you the next project to go and work on. And so you just have to understand, is that your culture? If that's not your culture, in most organizations, I'd say it shouldn't be your culture. If it is, you don't want that. You want people that are thinking above and beyond the task in front of them about what needs to be done for the team, for the project, for the client, for the company.
Yeah. Well, and I want to clarify. So we're going to get people who listen to this and watch this and be like, yeah, but, right? Yeah. So there are industries, there are positions, there are organizations, there are projects that require tighter management control. There are jobs, companies, organizations, areas, industries that require looser management control. That is a true statement, because somebody's going to be on here and say, well, I work in government, or I work in the military, or I work on support, and you don't understand. You have to be a micromanager. I want to be really clear. We understand at a cultural level, like Christian was saying, there are specific times where there needs to be tighter management. There needs to be tighter process. There need to be tighter efficiencies. That's not the point of this. The point is your culture supportive of people being able to make mistakes, do what they need to do, and get their jobs done? Or is your culture simply fear and intimidation based, where the manager is like, you will do it my way and you will not question it no matter what? Right. And military, does kind of breed this a little bit because, by the nature of what it is, there is that exists. We're talking about the corporate enterprise world. That's what we're talking about.
Right. But it is true. I think, to your point, like when people feel watched instead of trusted, they stop using the judgment. But it also then, like, you as the manager, as the leader that's doing that, if you're micromanaging, you are taking on the accountability for those things. The employee, they're waiting for instructions, approvals, sign-offs. Productivity drops if they don't have that checklist to go and do, or if they have to wait for the next step before they can move forward per your instruction, per your micromanagement. So productivity drops, not because people are lazy, but because they're afraid to be wrong, or you've made it clear you've not given them that next step yet. So just be careful what you're signing up for.
Yeah, do step one and then sit here and wait on me.
Yeah.
Probably not as great of a plan.
Yeah, it's You don't want the leadership to be the bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've seen through my career again and again and again, where it comes back to, we're waiting for you to make a decision on this. Well, I know, but I've got these other priorities. Like, okay, but we're all on hold until you review and sign off per your instructions.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you too, like I'm gonna say this openly as a leader that's been a manager for a really long time. A lot of organizations do operate like this. And what that creates is a lot of employees and contractors and people out there who that is what they know how to do. And so then when you do get somebody in a good, healthy cultural environment where a manager's like, okay, here's what I need you to do. Now I'm going to, stay out of your way and let you do it. I do feel like sometimes if you've not been in an organization where you've been held accountable to do the things you need to do, you're like, wait, what's happening right now? I don't understand, right? And yeah. I do think there are mixed models out there. And that's another thing is because if you haven't been in a culture where you have experienced a good manager, it's just as hard from the employee side as it is on the manager side sometimes. And I don't think we really talk about that a whole lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios. The other thought that came to mind that's different. That's not what we're talking about. It's like putting an employee on performance review where you are giving more scrutiny to their work. That's also not what we're talking about here. That is required. But you think about this in organizations where there's low trust. Mm-hmm. And again, it could be justified or it could be unjustified around that. It's like, but the danger is that it's exhausting for everyone to be able to maintain that. And so you're going to speed up burnout inside that organization. You're also going to be like the truly talented people aren't going to stick around in that kind of org. They want to be able to grow. They want to continue to develop their skills. And as you let the skill development, learning atrophy within your organization, you're going to have talent loss.
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of our experience and knowledge, and I talk a lot about tacit knowledge, and which is tacit knowledge is just the ability to do something based on experience, right? So I can show you how to do something, but unless you have done it over and over and over, that applied knowledge or that experiential knowledge doesn't exist. And this is something as we enter into the age of AI, I think that there's a lot of people having the conversation around how do people get experience if they're not allowed to be given the opportunity to get experience? And if you are micromanaging or you have a micromanager, then your team does not have the opportunity to fail, and they don't have the opportunity to learn, and they don't have the opportunity to grow, and they don't have the opportunity to get that experience if you're not allowing them to do some of those things and make some of those decisions. And ultimately what ends up happening is exactly, what I was saying before, is you then end up with a workforce. All they know how to do is sit and basically, what do you want now? 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 Right.
Yeah. There's a phrase which I've used. I know not everybody likes the phrase or the imagery, but where it has some negative thoughts around it too, is that give someone enough rope to hang themselves kind of thing, and part of that, and I've used it both in somebody who I didn't believe was going to be successful, but others where I said, hey, let's give them room to go, and everyone knows the visibility is on them. Yeah, I was the manager for them, but was giving them enough rope for them to go do what they needed, tie the beautiful knot, be successful, or fail, but, okay, maybe it's not the best phrase, but I've used it. But that idea of giving people an opportunity to go out there, come back and ask questions. It's interesting when you're going through the interviewing process. There's a lot of questions where it's not about the answer. There may not even be a right answer. It's more to do with their thought process, the logic of how they problem solve to get there. Like one of them, I've been asked at 2 different companies, how many windows are in New York City. It's not about the actual number. It'd be very difficult to find the actual accurate number. But I
I
peppered
do know the answer.
huh?
I know the exact answer.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
42?
It's a lot.
Oh, yeah, a lot. There's lots. Loads. But it's, so I went through like the second time that I had that question, and I said, are we talking buildings? Are we talking cars? It was like all windows. So like, all right. I said, are you asking for me to like how I would calculate the number, or are you asking me for the actual number? And he says, both. Like, okay. And so I just went through and started listing things off around that. But again, my point in sharing that is that it's sometimes giving people room. Here's the outcome. This is what we expect. Then giving them the space to go out and achieve that, learn from that, be successful or not. Those are some of the greatest learning experiences out there. The fact that I did some projects. I did one that was very big, very visible. One of my direct reports and I went and did an internal event. About 100 people show up for this thing. It took, a month to put this together with speakers and customers coming in and all this kind of things. And it was very successful on pieces of it. We learned a ton from that. But it was something where we were just given that space to go and do it. And we surprised a bunch of people with it. It's just something where I just learned so much about the organization, about the relationships and pulling all that together. I would have never learned if I was just given this discrete set of tasks to go and complete. So I still look back at it as like that. I learned more in that month and a half of pulling that together about that company than I would have, I had been there for almost 2 years, and I learned more in a month.
No, I would definitely, I would agree with that. Every experience where I've essentially had a manager or somebody that's just said, I need you to accomplish this thing, right? Here's a goal. Here's what I want you to do. And I'm going to be honest, like there's some times when I'm kind of, so we joke, we don't take pictures of us sitting in the corner crying, right? There's times where,
other people take those photos. We don't do that of ourselves.
But there are, right? There's times as you're growing and learning and experiencing and applying those skills that you've learned on doing some of these things that you're like, I've never done this before. And it's scary. And even if somebody tells you, here's my experience and here's how to do it better, or, here's some ideas and tips and tricks, it's still scary. It's still something you maybe haven't done. And the first couple of times you do something, you're building that confidence and you're building that knowledge. But I can tell you that every single time that I've been put into a situation where somebody says, here's what I need you to accomplish. Now, here's, time, bandwidth, money, whatever, to go get it done. I learn from that experience and I grow from that experience, and it builds my confidence and it builds my skill set and it builds my knowledge around what I'm doing. And I think that the more you can do that for people, the better it is.
Yeah. I think the shift away from micromanagement really starts with one question. Am I managing risk, or am I managing my own anxiety? If you can answer that honestly, and that might be difficult, but you'll know when to step in and when to step back.
Well, yeah. Are you creating autonomy, right? Are you saying, tell you what, go do this thing, and if any of these things happen, I need you to let me know. But outside of that, you can make all the decisions you want. And there's, a lot of companies have signing levels for this. If it's under a certain amount, you can make the decision. They have, decision boundaries and decision matrix of, here's when and how you can make decisions. I think the more autonomy you have, so that when do I need to engage with leadership versus when can I just do it on my own, makes it very, very easy for people to understand.
Do you have triggers around this, the things that you watch for in yourself or in organizations or with clients that you're working with?
Yeah. And a lot of the things that I've done, all over the board. Yes. It's that idea of here's what I need you to do. And let me know if, any of these things come up. Right. So, and it depends on the role and it depends on the task, but a lot of times, we'll have a task and we'll have somebody working on it, and then it'll just be like, okay, go run at it and get it done, and let me know if you have any roadblocks, and then let's look if any of those roadblocks are something you can't move on your own. We'll find somebody to help you, right? And I think I know we've done a lot of like CapEx systems for large companies where they've had to have approvals that go all the way up. If it's under this amount, you can make the decision on your own, and otherwise you need to go up to the next level. I've seen a lot of those. I've worked with a lot of those, and being a small company, we've got some of those things in place.
Yeah. I just was thinking too, from a project management standpoint, I remember having a director that was very anxious around tasks and timeliness, and in his defense, the head of the department of this IT department was, I wouldn't call her a micromanager. She was very sharp, very much on top of things, and I know that she would grill him on all those details, which forced him to know all the details, which is not a scalable model, people. You need to be able to scale that. But where I was able to support him, so he wasn't trying to be a micromanager. It was just because of the pressure he was under. But what I tried to do was in the risk management section, where I would go and like, here are the potential scenarios. I would try to be extra detailed on the risk management, so that if I knew he's asking questions, any of those questions I put into the risk management, and then say, all right, well, if then that happened, what would be the scenario? What would I go and do? And so I think that helped him, but also put the pressure back on the system and to show, okay, that question does come up, it's documented, we have a strategy there. And so he was able to leverage that planning and present that to the senior director, the GM. Can't remember what, I think that she was a GM. Anyway, up above him. And it was a great way of setting a guardrail to kind of identify, okay, somebody asking that question, we've got it in place. And that right there allowed him to relax a bit and then rely on that process.
Yeah. And I think that takes us directly into our next point, which is we should be coaching, not controlling, right? From a leadership perspective, and exactly this, if you're meeting with your team members and identifying what could go wrong, what is the risk we need to be aware of? And if it goes wrong, what are you allowed to do about it versus what has to go back to leadership? Then what ends up happening is, first of all, you're training and teaching, right? You're coaching them on how to handle specific situation. But to your point, you're also putting systems and controls in place that they can then handle autonomously, on their own. And now if they need help, you've already had the conversation. You already know what the boundaries are. You already know what the expectations are. If they need help or struggle or need to escalate, coming back to a coach is a lot easier and better than coming back to somebody who's controlling the situation, right?
Yep. Part of that, Sharon, is around that. It's just so frustrating is not getting timely feedback about things. If you're waiting until, and it might be if you're having weekly or twice a month one-on-ones, that might still be too late. You need to give it in the moment there, provide that feedback. When you see it while it's happening, give that coaching, give that feedback. If you have that timely, specific feedback, it's not hovering. You're like, it's like, here's what's going on. Maybe it's instilling in people the sense of urgency that you're getting pressure from up the chain. Hey, this is something like, I don't think you're taking this seriously enough. And here's what's going on. Here's what the VP, here's what the CEO are doing around this. And I think so that it's not freaking people out. That's my job, is to freak everybody out. The CEO is demanding this project that rests upon this lowly employee. No, but it's making sure that, again, we go back and say, all right, What are the patterns? What's the model? Is the risk analysis done? What would we go and do? What's the plan? What is the system under which we're delivering this project? What are the next steps?
Yeah,
and then communicating that out.
And there's that big list somewhere. I don't remember what all the words are, but the idea is it helpful and kind, right? Is the feedback you're providing helpful and kind? Because like to your point again, am I providing feedback from a place of managing my risk, providing you good, coaching that you can use to improve what you're doing? Or am I simply shutting things down and saying, smacking your hand and saying, don't do that because I'm scared or I'm anxious or I'm afraid? When you give that feedback, do it in a coaching, building trust,
right.
Honest and helpful and kind of way.
Great leaders, I would say great leaders monitor outcomes, not activity. So you stop tracking every move and start focusing on what are the actual results. Mm-hmm. People tend to rise to the occasion. Trust really is a performance accelerator. When you have high trust, it's amazing what people suddenly find that they're capable of doing.
Yeah. In fact, and I said this earlier, but it's really funny to me, people who come out of low trust environments tend to really struggle with that at first, because a lot, like my management style, a lot of times is I'll be like, okay, I just needed to get this done. And, let's talk about what you're doing and when you're doing it and go off and do it. Right. Let me know if you're running any problems. And there are people who come out of low trust environments that are like, aren't you going to read every single line on my task card? I'm like, I don't have time for that. I don't want to do that. Yeah. I don't care how you manage yourself, as long as ultimately you get it done and it's documented and, everybody's happy and we've met the goal that we put together.
Plus it's in the system. The AI will read it and pick it up so that, a month from now we can go back. Did we have that? Did we discuss that? Yes, it was there.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I know we talked about this earlier, but allowing room for people to make mistakes. Again, like if I'm monitoring every single task card and every single line item and every single little movement, you don't ever really learn how to grow and experience around that to solve your own problems. So it's much better to let you do that. And then, like you said, give good feedback and focus on, are you solving the problems? Not specifically like, well, this task card didn't get filled out correctly.
Right. Well, I do like the, as a best practice, having this structure. I mean, having good metrics, having standards for and regularly scheduled, predictable review points, milestones. Here's how we are tracking our progress over time. All those things are as important as documenting our roles and responsibilities. So if somebody is like, I'm getting confused, let's go back and look at the role. Was it not clearly defined? Again, that's a systems approach to solving the problem. Like, is there a problem with the system? Did we not have the right outline? Did we not have the right structure or model for somebody to move through and execute on this? But another big thing, Sharon, that I think is one of the strongest trust signals a leader can send, it's public support for that person. Even if a team makes a different choice than you would have as a manager, backing them up builds confidence, and confidence builds better judgment over time. Yeah. And so even if they got a partial result and it's not as good as it would have been had you been controlling all those things, recognize the good outcomes, make recommendations, say, hey, here's how I would improve upon that. And here's what else is there's to go and do. That's a great coaching model. Not shutting people down for having tried and been less successful than you. Yep. But recognizing, the effort and that, the achievements that have been made.
In fact, I have seen so many amazing, cool things that I would have never known about, right? Never. I would have never seen it. I would have never tried it. I would have never thought about it had I not worked, in different groups, or had I not managed different people who were then allowed to come in with those ideas, because I'm like, oh, that's something that, had I been the one to lay all that out, it never even would have occurred to me. So I think there's so many things you can learn from that. The other thing is, when you do this, I'd like to believe that you're coaching the next level of people who are moving up into leadership on how to act and respond in that way as well, because when they feel good about it, they're going to continue to grow and they're going to teach people the same way.
Right. Yep. 100%. Thinking of like call to actions, people, thank you for watching the episode. If hopefully some of this has landed with you. I think if there's something that you want to go and do, if you're a leader, a manager that's out there, you'll look around, find a task, a decision that you can fully delegate and let go of. Try that. Just like one thing. Try that.
How to not be a micromanager this week. Let something go.
And I think that it's another mistake that's often made when you're going through with your direct reports sitting around, no matter what level that you're in, and you're going through and talking about what needs to be done. You also need to outline what you're doing around those things. That needs to be out there and visible as well, so people know that. Because every level of leadership there has some percentage of individual contributor. You're doing some other pieces. But make all of that more visible as well, so that people better understand how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah. And I also think that it's really important to ask to know where you're managing too tightly. And I'm going to add from a manager perspective, the other piece to this is you should ask where are areas where they are feeling micromanaged, and what are some recommended solutions to solve that? Because oftentimes it's really easy to be like, stop micromanaging. Okay, how are we going to continue to hit the goal if I back off on this particular thing? What does that solution look like, right? So for both sides, right, as a manager, make sure that you're consistently asking, are there areas where I am micromanaging that I should back off? And as
I was going to say, and don't then plot revenge for having been insubordinate.
Yes, and then be like, I'm going to write down there.
Wrong approach.
No retribution. In fact, I think there's laws against that. But yeah, as an employee, I think if you're going to provide that information to your manager, which I think is 100% great, be prepared to let them know ways that you could potentially take that over so that they don't have to feel that anxiety about the task that they're micromanaging.
Yep. Well, that's it for this episode, folks. Sharon, great conversation as always. Thanks everybody for participating. Be sure to follow us. Check out our YouTube channel. And if you can find us out on YouTube at Project Failure Files. And we are back next Monday, every Monday, always at 9 a.m. Pacific. We're always there. We took 1 week off for Christmas week. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
Otherwise, I know, how dare us?
How dare
but
us?
Other than that, we're always here.
So. Absolutely. Yeah, like and subscribe. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.